use urgency and scarcity, do it authentically.
Yeah.
So maybe if you're offering a one-on-one call with people, you do have limited hours in your day. There is a limit to how many people can book in, right? So you can have that authentic urgency.
That's right.
If you are running a sale, close the sale when you say you're going to, and don't reopen another one immediately. Yeah. Having it so that they trust your brand, but they know that, hey, look, when you say this, you mean this. Yeah. And so it pushes that urgency to take action without damaging the integrity of your brand.
Welcome to Playing with Perspective, the suspended animation podcast, where we hear real stories from real people and we tackle all sorts of fun topics in the areas of business, marketing, entrepreneurship, mindset, the arts, and, well, life itself. It's amazing what you'll pick up. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for listening to us. Darren Saul here, your host of Playing with Perspective, the suspended animation podcast. It's episode 235. I have the fantastic Simone Robinson in the house. How are you, Simone?
Great. Thank you. Fantastic to be here.
Thank you for joining me. And just a quick one for everybody before we jump into the interview. I've put together loads of great courses, products, webinars, some free, some paid, all on one landing page. So I'm going to put those links in the show notes. So if you're interested in learning about podcasting, whether you're a guest or a host, check that out. And there's lots of great stuff there. But let's get into it. Today's episode is all about the power of storytelling and crafting copy that converts. So just for everybody who doesn't know who Simone is, she is a seasoned copywriter and marketer with over a decade of experience helping brands stand out and connect with their ideal clients. She's worked with a range of businesses, from innovative startups to celebrity personal brands, turning ideas into impactful stories. Simone is passionate about helping others find their voice in order to create lasting success. So Simone, storytelling and copy. These are two of my favorite topics right now because everybody's talking about, and especially storytelling. We hear this all the time. Storytelling. And also copy. Like, everybody has to become a marketer now. In business, unfortunately, anything you do, you are a marketer. And if you are a marketer, you have to know how to write copy. So I'm really interested in getting into this stuff with you today. But why don't you tell us a bit more about your background and how you ended up in copywriting and marketing and storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. I started my career in copywriting just over 10 years ago now. So I've always loved words, always been really great at it. And so when I went into my university degree, I actually self-funded it by content writing. And so I was doing my degree in psychology at the time and thought, I'll just do this kind of content writing on the side. And content writing turned into copywriting. Copywriting turned into strategy and strategic marketing. By the time I finished my degree, I was well and truly entrenched in the marketing world and found out that I loved it, probably a little bit more than the actual clinical practicing side of psychology. So just decided to continue to take it that way. See how it went. Great. I'm still here, so I must be doing something right. And yeah, so my background in psychology has actually been a really massive help. I didn't end up in the field, but did end up in a field where understanding how people think is a big game changer.
Big time. Like I was just about to say, studying psychology is probably one of the best things you could do to become a marketer.
Yes.
Because like marketing is all about psychology.
Yes.
And that's why I love marketing, because I love people. I love psychology. I've never studied psychology, but I love what people do and what makes people do certain things and not do certain things. And how can I write copy or position things in a way that drive an outcome? So what a fantastic grounding for marketing.
Yes, absolutely. I'm biased, right? But I do find that all the best marketers I've ever worked with are people who are at least interested in psychology and understanding how humans work.
Absolutely. And because marketing is all about the other person. Selling is about you and your products and your services, but marketing is the behavior or understanding behavior of the other person. So you have to have an interest in other people.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Without a doubt. So did you work for a corporate and then went out on your own, or what was the journey?
So the journey was I started as a freelancer.
Oh, wow.
So started as a freelancer, and then as it happens, a lot of copywriters will tell you you start with one project as a contractor, and next thing you know, you're working 40 hours for this corporation.
Right.
Like they tend to suck you in. So I've had the privilege of working for some of the bigger agencies over in the US, which has been really great for kind of learning that different approach. And I've also done some corporate in terms of working in those sort of CMO marketing director roles for a couple of brands, both in the US and Australia. That brings a different perspective into it in the freelancing, right? When you're seeing it at that sort of higher level, you're able to understand how that filters down. But even in those roles, I joke because I couldn't let go of the copy, and I'd be running the marketing department, but also writing the copy because I get so attached to that part of the process. And in my biased opinion, it's just such an important part that you've really got to get it right.
Yes, so true.
Yes, it answers your question, in and out of the corporate agency world and in and out of the freelancing. So
Nice. And did you work in the US as well, like physically?
no, I haven't actually been to the US, but up until reasonably recently, I had quite a large weighting of my clients be US based.
Wow,
So
cool.
funny how that is. It does a number on you for the 3 a.m. meetings.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's a great experience. It's a very good market to learn copywriting in, just a lot more opportunity for advertising just with the bigger population.
And the US is also very advanced in terms of their marketing machine and their marketing strategies. I'm always listening to people in the US about what they do. And there's some great marketers in Australia too, but I think just as a culture, they've just developed really well in that space.
Yeah, they're also a little bit more receptive to marketing because it's more normalized to have certain types of marketing messages presented. Whereas you find some places, the UK is quite similar to Australia, you find a little bit more resistance when it comes to having some of those more direct approach conversations. So a little bit nuanced. You can work in both, obviously, as long as you know the differences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a bit like you. I'm a bit of a control freak. So I can't let go of a lot of things. But I suppose the secret is to outsource it to someone who is also a control freak or a creative and that is really passionate about what they're doing, so you get good results. I won't just outsource it to anybody because then you're really not going to get what you want. But let's chat about storytelling, because storytelling is thrown around everywhere these days. So for the people who might not be that marketing inclined and might be interested in what that actually means, can you break that down for us? What does it actually mean when people say it's all about stories and storytelling,
sure,
et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, that's a bit of a buzzword now. Yeah, so look, ultimately, humans have developed to love stories. That's you used to do a lot of oral tradition, a lot of things have been passed down that way. That's just something that we're naturally inclined to want to pay attention to. We don't want to pay attention to being sold. We don't always want to be paying attention to the facts and figures, but most people enjoy hearing a story, whether they're watching a movie or they're reading a book or they're just chatting with someone. That kind of communication is something that we're hardwired to want to listen to. And so when you put that into your marketing materials, people are going to be more inclined to not only listen to it, but enjoy it or share it or engage with it. And I actually used to go straight to fiction a little bit in my content writing days. So there's a lot to be said for how having that kind of pattern, right, that really good start, that really compelling hook that brings you in, a middle that keeps you guessing, a problem you've got to overcome, and then an ending that kind of ties it all together, whether it's fiction or whether it's a story about how your brand came about or a great client testimonial. That kind of hooks people in significantly more than here's the list of things that we do. I want to listen to a story. And that's where it comes in when it comes to your marketing.
Love that. And funny enough, I'm listening to a really cool business coach and entrepreneur named Graham Cochran. And this morning I was listening to his podcast and he was talking a bit about marketing and copywriting. And he said, human beings are wired to close the loop. We have to close the loop. So using copy that is what they call open copy is like a great way to force people to dive in because they have to know what happened.
Yeah, it's a great
technique. Have to close that loop. So that's all these little tricks that we use in marketing, and I'm sure that you can elaborate much more on all these different things, but it all starts to form an underlying story and you have to know what happened.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. No, open loops is such a powerful technique. Always leave at least one of them open in your copywriting, right? Always something, like you'll hear it a lot actually. If you ever were on a sales page or you were listening to somebody talk in a webinar, you'll probably hear it. Oh, I'm going to share with you the secret to doing X, Y, Z just in a minute. But first, we're going to look at whatever.
Exactly.
And so that's the kind of way that you're like, oh, I have to say it because I need to listen to find out what that secret is or find out what this thing you're going to share is.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Well, at the end of this conversation, I'm going to give you a really cool free gift.
absolutely.
Just hang out till the end. Till we
Absolutely.
yes,
it's very compelling.
So stories is really just about satisfying that human need to go on a journey, visualize, go on that emotional ride, and human beings are just wired that way. We need to listen to stories. We need to get involved with stories. We love stories. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. So I suppose that no wonder why it's become such a big buzzword these days in marketing.
Yes, people are realizing you don't want to necessarily listen or read a boring sales pitch.
Yeah, you don't want to just read a text or, a formula.
Ah, yes, yeah. People are going to share and engage far more with the story.
Absolutely. Love it. So when it comes to writing copy, let's drill this down because I want to really give the audience a little bit of a masterclass in basic copywriting. So if you want to write copy, how do we write copy that actually sells, that engages people and makes them do whatever you want them to do?
That's a very, very good question. So I'd say one of the most important things just in any copy you're doing is really pay attention to how you're starting off. Mm-hmm. So your hook, the thing that brings people in, whether it is a video, whether it's you've written it on a sales page, it's an ad, making sure that you're disrupting the way people are thinking and you're catching their attention right off the bat is probably one of the most important elements. And it's actually something that a mentor of mine told me is write 10 headlines before you use one. And it's the idea of you have to really nail that part of the process, because if you get that, the rest is going to flow. Your angle is going to be strong. The way you talk to people, it's going to bring them in. If you miss that, you miss those crucial couple of seconds, people are going to scroll past, they're going to click out of the page, they're not going to care. Yeah. So that's a huge, huge part of it. And it's often underrated, I feel, the headline hook part of the process, but it's probably number one.
Yeah. And funny you should say that, if I could just jump in.
Yeah.
It's always the way that, like, I'm terrible at this. I'll just say, yeah, that sounds really good. And I'll put a funny, cool headline together that I like. Yeah. But it's usually the way that what I like doesn't really work for everybody else. So it's so important to use multiples and test and see what's working and what's not working.
Oh, absolutely.
Always, whatever you think is going to land, doesn't land.
Absolutely, because if you're in the industry and you're speaking to a way that maybe that's not the way that your audience is thinking, or speaking about the problem or considering things, but you as the expert have a different approach. So having these multiple options really gives you that insight into what's working and what's not working. Yeah. And off the back of that, I'd say the second most important thing, if you do, will improve your copy. People don't care about the features, they care about the results.
Yep.
Right? If you are selling something, you have to, the framework I use is feature, benefit, result.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about feature benefit, but you need to take it the step further. Mm-hmm. And if it's an emotional result, that's even better. So maybe let's talk fitness, weight loss. I'm going to give you a great diet plan. Okay, great. That's cool. I don't care. The great diet plan is going to help you lose 10 kilograms in 5 months. All right, that's good. And then finally, you're going to have the result of you feel comfortable in your favorite dress. Exactly. You can run around with your kids. Your sleep apnea goes away. Right, whatever it is, whatever your audience is struggling with. Taking this from feature all the way through, not stopping at the benefit, but going all the way to that lifestyle result is the strongest way to improve your copy. If you keep bringing it back to that lifestyle they want to get, it'll be much, much stronger. Right?
It's about emotion. You're tapping into emotion.
Always.
How are you going to feel when you've achieved that result? And that's what you've got to tap into.
Oh, absolutely.
That shoots a whole new world of imagination and dreaming, and that's what we want to get people to.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because no one's buying your product because it's the product, right? Unless it's incredibly practical and it just happened to be the first thing they saw walking into a store.
Yep.
Realistically, especially in the online sales world, they're buying the result, they're buying the emotion, they're buying the Stanley Cup because it's trendy and they feel part of the group. They're not necessarily buying it, but you get it at Kmart, right? But why do they choose that brand, right? Because it's got this kind of feeling and association behind it of that kind of in-group. And that's a big driver for people, is that in-group feeling. There's a couple drivers, but that's certainly a good example.
And even further to that, even if nobody sees the cup, if you're at home with that cup, you still feel like you're part of the community.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how emotion drive human beings.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything else that you want to share with us?
Really key things, I'd say your call to action.
Yeah.
2 things about your call to action. 1, we need one call to action. And I know that sounds a little oversimplified, but the amount of times that it's like, oh, you can go to my Facebook page, or you can download this, or you can click this link, or one thing. One thing. You give people 3 options, they choose no options. You give them one option, they're going to choose it. So being very clear on your call to action, whether it's an ad, whether it's a sales page, whatever, that's really important. And secondly, again, tying it back to emotion. So instead of going, yes, I want the ebook. Yes, I want to learn how to get featured on 5 podcasts in the next month. We get real specific to what they're actually looking to achieve. And that kind of invokes that, yes, when I click this, when I opt in, I'm opting into the result, not to the feature, not to the item, to this thing you've sold me on.
Nice. Yeah.
So, kind of twofold. But if you nail your hook, your emotion, and then your call to action, all the rest is tweaking.
Yeah. So really, it's good to sit down and strategize and prepare and test a few things and really get those key points nailed in, and the rest of the article or rest of the copy will just flow, because those 3 things are the most important things.
Those are the most important. Even you can be a really technically strong copywriter, but if you don't get these right, it's not going to matter. You could be pretty new to the game and not, have these things only, and you miss some of the little technical bits, or, oh, I didn't have this particular guarantee, and you can still have a stronger page. And so obviously there's a lot in it. There's a lot to test. There's a lot of strategies, but these are the core things that will keep any sales page on the right track. I say sales page. It applies across. If it's an email, if it's an ad, doesn't matter.
Yeah, love that. Love that. So true. And when would you say it's important to use stories and when it's not important to use stories?
So, especially when you're trying to hook people in who are somewhat cold to you, the story is quite important. If they know you, they like you, they trust you, and you share something about maybe something you've got coming up that you'd like them to attend, or there's this opportunity, they're more likely to connect with that just because they've already built that rapport with you. But when you are targeting people who don't know you, they need a reason to continue to read. They need a reason to continue to stay and, get brought onto this journey. And so that's probably the most important time, is that first sales page, that website. The first interactions people are having with you is where the story is the most important. And it doesn't mean you need a long-winded ad, right? Like sometimes the ad doesn't have to have a full story, and sometimes it can. So I had one perform really well that was telling the story of the Lamborghini company and how it was founded. And it's a really good story. And it was actually about business. It was nothing to do with cars. But that story brought people in, and they got really interested in it and just clicked naturally because, Lamborghini's a bit of a buzzword in the business industry, and it brought people through. So that's a good kind of approach, is if it's cold to traffic, you're probably going to see a better result if you compel them to continue to listen, to share your media, engage with you.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about email marketing.
Yeah.
Do you get involved a lot in email marketing as well?
I do. Yes.
I can imagine you would. What generally is the consensus these days? Does it work? Does it not work as well as it used to? Can it work?
Yes, it's a very good question. So I'm honestly a big fan of email marketing, and that has to do a lot with your lifetime customer value. And it has a lot to do with, if you have people who are in your ecosystem, you've gotten them through a variety of ways and they haven't converted, keeping in touch with them, making sure that you are omnipresent, that they are seeing you and hearing from you and just engaging with you, is long-term going to help the chance of closing that person at the end. It's also really good in terms of if you have somebody who's already bought from you, but you want to make sure you are nurturing them, they feel looked after. When something else comes up, they might want to attend, they might want to engage. That's another really powerful way that email marketing is going to help you. Where it's not going to help you, it's not going to replace paid marketing in terms of the amount of leads you're getting in.
Yeah.
It's not going to necessarily mean you send an email and get 10 sales. But it is going to mean that people see you, people know you, people like you, people trust you.
Yeah.
And when it comes to email marketing, I actually suggest you don't sell all the time. In fact, give them value, give them entertainment. Like, I should want to open your email just because it's a good read.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point of, oh yeah, I want to hear what he has to say. I want to hear that cool story, back to stories. I want to get this really good tip because I know there's just so much value from this person who's an expert. Then when you do sell something, or when they do come across the ad, or they do see the social post, they're that much more likely to take action.
Very true. And I suppose these days everybody's talking about like how to build your email marketing list. So we're going down the world of lead magnets and all that kind of stuff. Have you got any tips for us about what are some of the best techniques to build your email list?
Look, a lead magnet is great. If the purpose of your lead magnet is to build your email list, it's going to be doing a pretty good job, right? Downside of that, and this is where you might see that disconnect when people worry maybe email doesn't work, is people coming in through a lead magnet are going to 9 times out of 10 be a lower quality lead for you. Because they didn't pay anything, the barrier was really low, and there wasn't as much incentive for them to actively engage with you in your business. There was no pre-qualifier, it wasn't a low ticket. And so in terms of the people coming through, they'll likely need much longer nurture cycles before they do anything.
Yep, makes sense.
And so it's not necessarily that a lead magnet won't work. It's a great way to build a list. You just have to be aware that building that list through that platform isn't always going to turn into those immediate sales, just because of the nature of how people are coming through that system.
Yep.
So when people are trying to generate quick cash revenue, I'm like, do not do lead magnets. You want to do a different funnel, a low ticket, a webinar, maybe just a book a call funnel, maybe not the lead magnet. So
yep. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Really, really good. Because there's a new trend now, what they call selling from stage. So webinars, selling in a way, like giving a webinar and then selling at the end, or doing a live presentation and selling at the end, is a huge industry now.
Yeah, absolutely
huge. And they can, again, if you do that well and you create evocative stories and you put a really clean, tight presentation together that's really structured well, you can convert really well off one of those kind of
absolutely
webinars or live keynotes versus nurturing or giving the time to nurture your email list.
If you're looking for an immediate sort of cash injection into the business, not a lead magnet, right? Like, again, quality is not going to be there, but there's, like you said, so many other ways that are really great that you can leverage, and potentially even leverage the list you've built where you invite them to these things. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in other words, marketing is a long game as well. Everything's a long game. There's no quick fix. There's no silver bullet anymore. You've got to try lots of different things, and you've got to be patient. And it's a long process to know what's going to work for your audience in particular that might not work for other people's audiences as well.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. There are things you can do to get quicker results, but again, they will require testing. You'll have to see, like you said, what's working for your audience, what is connecting with them, even just tweaking webinars, because that's another thing where, yes, it can do super well. People do millions of webinar funnels alone.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's great. But that said, sometimes they're hard to get right. And so it is a bit of a process, but once you're there, it can be a lot of value. So same for building a list or, yeah.
So true.
Variety of approaches are usually a good way to go.
Haven't you found that, oh my God, marketing these days is just becoming so much more multifaceted?
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, when you started off in marketing, there were 2 or 3 things you could do. Now there's 20 things.
Yes.
It just gets more and more in depth. And with technology now, where does it end? Oh my God. You've got to keep on top of it all.
It can be a lot, right? So the kind of thing I would advise on that is, if there's so many strategies, and there's so much you could potentially do, is test in a controlled way, right? So I'm a big fan of the scientific method. You have a control and then you have the challenger.
Yep.
So you actually go, all right, I've tested this webinar funnel and it's done this well. Now I'm going to test a low ticket and we're going to see how does it go against that one? What kind of results am I seeing when I tweak this? And being methodical, so you're not chasing the new shiny thing every time it comes along and you're going to market it going, this is going to be the thing that revolutionizes your business. Because unless you're doing it with that sort of intention and you've got your strong foundation, it probably won't. And then you just end up spinning your wheels, diluting your budget. You can do well with just one or two key things, but it's just a case of testing very clearly defined what those one or two key things are for your audience and your product and your business, and also how you like delivering your message. Because if you hate webinars or keynote speaking, it doesn't matter how great it does.
Yeah.
You're going to burn yourself out trying to do it.
That's right.
So maybe you're better with an evergreen one, right, where you don't really have to interact with people as much.
Yep.
Right?
So true, so true. And what about good old advertising? Social media ads and ads in general. What is your take on that?
So it can still work. It can still work quite well.
Yep.
I've gotten some great results for people in the last year, so I'm still seeing and get good return on investment. That said, it's not as easy as it used to be.
No.
It is getting more and more saturated. And so that's predominantly the problem that you see, is that when it's so saturated, you're competing not only for people's attention, but it's who can pay the most for this lead.
Yeah.
And so, going a little bit off track, but one thing I highly recommend people do is know their numbers. Because if you're like LTV, your lifetime customer value, maybe, right, that first purchase is, let's say, $100. They buy $100 off you. And so you can't afford to pay $200 for them. Of course you can't. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But if over the course of a lifetime they make you $1,000, you can very well afford to pay $200.
Gotcha.
And so being very clear on exactly what that looks like, what your numbers are, keeps you competitive on the front end. Right. And so people who are not aware of that, they don't know how much they can spend, they don't know what to test, who to target, and so it just dilutes it, and then they might as well not be doing it at all.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing, that when you know your numbers, even if you can't compete with this person, okay, great, now we know we need to take a different approach. Maybe lead magnet is a good way because it's cheaper typically to get those leads, right? So then we can find an alternative where you can still be competitive and succeed in the market. Yes. And that's a really great way to utilize these. That and your omnipresence. So even if they don't buy immediately, they see you. And if they see you on social media and you're sending your emails and then they see you on ads, when it eventually happens that something triggers, something works for them, you are now a presence that they trust, they've got that touch point with you, and they're more likely to convert long term.
So true, so true. And I 100% agree with you. I think I love social media and the reach is incredible, or the potential reach is incredible, but it is becoming really noisy, really saturated, and you've got to be better at it to really get the eyeballs. So I'm almost building a nice blend of social as well as email marketing now, where I never did as much email marketing before, because I really think in the future that's going to be a really important piece of the puzzle again because of social media saturation. Yes,
because then once they're in, they hear your voice a lot clearer in the emails. You get them in maybe through the ads, you get them in through your posts, they see you on their feed regularly, and then they get the email from you. Fantastic. It's eventually something tips the person over the edge. And you never know really what's going to be the thing that makes them go, yes, this is now I want to engage with you. This is now I want to buy from you, whatever your sales cycle looks like. But having those multifaceted options for people, even at a lower spend, I find is really important. Even though sometimes it feels like it's doing nothing. I recently spoke to someone who said just that. She's, I don't know why I'm even posting organically, because it does nothing. I get none of my leads from there. And I'm like, that's true. And I believe you, your numbers, but it's very likely that, people who have been referred to you and then they go to your page and they check it out, feel more confident now that they've seen it. So
definitely,
sometimes it can feel like a endless spinning your wheels, but typically you will get traction if you're in that omnipresent space.
I really agree. I think that sometimes the ad itself might not be the driving force, but the fact that they've seen you somewhere and they finally see you again, it almost substantiates, oh, yeah, that's right. That person knows what they're doing. They're specialists in that area. They must know what they're talking about. Let me have a further discussion or a further discovery into that service or product. So true. Interesting. So marketing is And there's two schools of thought. Like some people say, you must use marketing tactics that show me a return on investment. And there's another school of thought, like a direct return on investment. And there's another school of thought that says, oh, look, build branding. This is just, we're spending money on ads, but it's just branding. It's overall branding. And some people say, I don't want to waste money on that. And some people say it's very important. So it's a tricky one.
Yes. I'm from the direct response world. So as it says, direct response, you are hoping for a direct response, right, from your audience. And that's where having these multiple faceted strategies are great. Because again, you might not get an immediate return on that email or that social post, but it is helpful. It is helping you. And then when that ad goes out, that funnel that's really targeted and has urgency, and you've got that really clear, you need to take action right now for this really good reason, they're pushed through it. I do love direct response. That's a lot of my background. A lot of the, again, American agencies are very direct response focused. Having a bit of a blend, at least in my experience, always does better than, you want your marketing to do something. You don't want to invest thousands of dollars into, my brand looks good, but at the same time, you need to understand that you're not always going to be able to exactly track that post did something.
Exactly.
But just trust that ultimately you will see that in the other parts of the marketing.
Yeah, so true. I think it's important to know who your audience is, where they are, and just make sure that you're trying to reach them where they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And eventually, as you say, with omnipresence, things happen.
Yes.
Yeah, love it. And what about writing ads? Obviously, we've discussed copywriting. Have you got any particular strategies or tips for ads per se?
Yes. I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself. A good hook, I promise, a good hook is first and foremost the thing that especially on ads, because I said it's important on a sales page, but at least on a sales page, they've clicked. They want to be there, right? On an ad, they've got so much noise. We've talked about the saturation. We've talked about how difficult it is to stand out. And if you are not disrupting their thought patterns and really interrupting that train of thought and getting them to pause and have a look, you're just not going to see the results. So it's about that pattern interrupt. And that is something that they talk about in sales as well, where you disrupt the way people are thinking and the way they think this is going to go and what they expect to see, what they expect to hear. If you can disrupt that, you will catch their attention. And so you can do that through a polarizing statement. Controversial statements, it's a good way to go. And then you maybe can talk about why you've said that, again, leading into the stories. You can have some sense of urgency that catches attention, where you're like, hey, this is a limited time. Sale ends tomorrow, something like that. You don't want to overuse that one, but it's still a great way to.
One thing I've been studying a lot lately in urgency and scarcity. Work.
Yes, they're big. They work well as long as they're authentic. And this is something I've been teaching clients for years. Do not have a timer on your website running to an evergreen webinar.
That's right.
And then you refresh it and the timer restarts because people are catching on to that. And so if you use urgency and scarcity, do it authentically. So maybe if you're offering a one-on-one call with people, you do have limited hours in your day. There is a limit to how many people can book in, right? So you can have that authentic urgency. If you are running a sale, close the sale when you say you're going to, and don't reopen another one immediately. Having it so that they trust your brand, but they know that, hey, look, when you say this, you mean this. And so it pushes that urgency to take action without damaging the integrity of your brand. Because unfortunately, it was common practice for a long time in the industry to inflate this. I've never liked that. And now more than ever, people are catching on. People are wise to it. It's how people don't want to book a discovery call anymore because they know you're going to sell them. You've got to be really clear about
discovery call.
I use discovery call, but it's exclusively for actual chats with people that have nothing to do with sales. I call my sales call something else.
Because in the old days as well, we used to have retail stores that was on sale, 50% off for 10 years.
Yes, all the time. The mattress sales.
The whole thing was always on sale.
And there's no urgency unless it's the first time you're passing the store.
That's right.
You're not going to be like, oh yeah, I have to buy now. You'll be like, oh, buy next week. It'll still be on sale.
Yeah,
exactly. So if you use it, and it can work, but do it authentically, genuinely,
good point.
And not in excess.
So being authentic and writing good, clever copy with good hooks.
Yes, good hooks. Again, good CTA. bring people in. There's a lot of little techniques you can use, but again, if you're nailing these big pieces, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, so true. Love it. Have you got an example or a case study that you might want to share with us, obviously very confidentially, about some strategy that you've used lately and maybe the client was a bit skeptical and you said, no, this is what we should do, and all of a sudden the results have been incredible?
Yes. All right. The use of that Lamborghini ad was really great. It had absolutely nothing to do with what we were selling at all. Completely off script. It was about businesses.
Yep, love it.
I think it was about buying businesses, actually.
It's a perfect example of a visual hook.
Completely. Yeah, we had the guy who runs the business. He filmed in a Lamborghini because he has one. And as he was getting into it, he started talking about how the owner of Lamborghini, he owned a tractor store, he had a good bit of money, he bought a Ferrari, fantastic. There were problems with the car. He went, all right, I want to speak to the owner of Ferrari. At the time was still accessible. And so had a conversation, went, hey, look, I work in parts, right? I have a tractor company. There's a couple of issues here, and I think you can improve the X, Y, and Z, do this. The guy who owned Ferrari went, go back to tractors. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to hear it. And a couple of years later, Lamborghini was launched as a competitor to Ferrari exclusively because of this insult and conversation. And so now they're obviously a direct competitor with Ferrari, and they do very well. And that was a good story, but it was not, we weren't talking about cars. We were only talking about business and building businesses. And so that led people into, okay, that's a super compelling story. I'm interested in learning more. I want to listen to you talk. You told it really well. You're sitting in a Lamborghini. It's nice and visual. Let me click. Let me hear the rest. Using stories that aren't always directly connected, as long as you can link them. Also good to spice up your feed and not sound like you're talking about the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Like being a little bit more lateral in how you start maneuvering into the content, which is quite clever. Yeah?
Yes, absolutely. And again, that particular audience was definitely going to be sucked in by a Lamborghini story. But you got to know your audience. That's another thing. Not everyone's going to want to hear that. Not every audience will resonate with that or find that fun or exciting. Right. But this particular audience was targeting mostly men between 20 and 30 who were entrepreneurial. Yeah. So you bring up the sports cars, you're going to hook them in.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Simone, that's been absolutely amazing. Do you want to tell people how to find you and how they can work with you as well?
Yes, absolutely. So the best way to reach me is on my website. So that's simonerobinson.com.au. Of course, you can always connect with me on platforms like LinkedIn. Send me a DM. That's always a great way to connect. And we can chat about what you're looking to achieve and the best ways that we can achieve that. We'll start with your message. We will really dial that in, as we've been talking about through the conversation, getting that message, getting that story, and making sure that we're talking to the right people and pulling that emotion out. And then we can go into that strategic thinking about how we can implement and start optimizing the actual marketing side of things. Love it.
And do you work with any size organization, from solopreneur to corporate? Doesn't matter, overseas, wherever?
I do. I work globally. I've got quite a few clients over in the US and New Zealand, as well as Australia. And whether you are a kind of the smaller solopreneur all the way up to, I've been lucky enough to work with billion-dollar companies over in the US. Yes, retail, service-based. I have run the gambit. That's the privilege of working with a lot of people. But right now, I will say that I am working with a lot of the smaller to medium businesses. If you're getting lost, if an agency can't help you yet, and you're not quite looking to do all your marketing, I am here to help. I offer a lot of very flexible packages that kind of work with that small to medium business that sometimes can get a little bit lost when it comes to the bigger agencies.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're working as a copywriter / small agency as well.
Yes, I've been calling myself a one-person agency, just a fun gimmick. But yes, effectively supporting on everything from the actual copy through to the running of the ads and the monitoring of the socials.
Simone, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate that detailed conversation. We got to some great stuff. We've learned about all sorts of different marketing aspects today, which are all very relevant. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your knowledge and your experience. I always like to leave my guest with the last word. Anything that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Emotion, use emotion, and write 10 times, choose one.
Very cool. I'm going to remember that, because I'm the worst at that. I just say, yep, that looks good, because I'm in a hurry. But
Yeah, most people are. We're busy, business owners.
so true.
Amazing.
Beautiful. Simone, thank you so much for coming on the show. And everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I'll make sure that I'll put all the links in the show notes so you can find Simone and work with her. And we wish you a fantastic day. We'll see you very soon for our next episode of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. Bye for now. Thanks again for joining me for another episode of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. If you would like to join me as a guest on the show, I would be delighted to collaborate. Just reach out via www.suspendedanimation.com.au. Also, remember to click on the link in the show notes for loads of great podcasting resources, webinars, courses, and opportunities to help you on your podcast journey. Many of them free. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.